ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। श्रवतां स्वकथा कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सताम्। नष्टप्रायश भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Hare Krishna. So today we will be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 87, the prayers of the personified Vedas. In the last Sunday Srimad Bhagavatam class, we covered Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 86. Arjuna kidnaps Subhadra and Lord Krishna blesses his devotees, Shuttadev Brahman and King Bahulashva. And simultaneously he was present at both the places along with the great sages who accompanied him on this journey to Mithila. And that particular chapter kind of like ends where this chapter begins with the inquiry of Parikshit Maharaj. So let's cover the very first verse. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 87, verse 1. Shri Parikshit Uvacha Brahman Brahmanya Nidreshe Nirgune Gunavrittayaha Katham charanti shrutyah sakshat sadasatah pare. Shri Parikshit Uvacha. Shri Parikshit said, Brahman, O Brahman Shukdev, Brahmani in the absolute truth, Anirdeshe, which cannot be described in words, Nirgune, which has no qualities, Guna, the qualities of material nature, Vrittayaha, whose scope of action, Katham, how, Charanti, function by referring, Shrutayaha, the Vedas, Sakshat, directly, Sat, to material substance, Asataha, and its subtle causes, Pare, in that which is transcendental. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Shri Parikshit said, O Brahman, how can the Vedas directly describe the absolute, supreme absolute truth, who cannot be described in words? The Vedas are limited to describing the qualities of material nature, but the Supreme is devoid of these qualities, being transcendental to all material manifestations and their causes. Purport. Before beginning his commentary on this chapter, Srila Sridhar Swami prays, Vagaisha yasya vadane, Lakshmir yasya cha vakshasi, yasyaste hridaye samvid, tam Narasimham aham bhaje. I worship Lord Narasimha, within whose mouth resides the great masters of eloquence, upon whose chest resides the goddess of fortune, and within whose heart resides the divine potency of consciousness. Sampradaya Vishuddhaya Artham Sviya Nirbandha Yantriyataha Shruti Stuti Mita Vakhyam Karishyami Yathamati, desiring to purify my sampradaya and being bound by duty, I will briefly comment on the prayers of the personified Vedas to the best of my realization. Shrimad Bhagavatam Purvahe Saratah Sannishevitam Maya tu tada upasprastam uchchishtham upachiyate. Inasmuch as Srimad Bhagavatam has already been perfectly honored by my predecessors' explanations, I can only gather together the remnants of what they have honored. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti offers his own invocation. Mama ratna vanihi bhavam ratnanya parichintavataha hasantu santo jihiremi nasva swantaha vinodakrit. The saintly devotees may laugh at me for becoming a jewel merchant, though I know nothing about precious jewels. But I feel no shame, for at least I may attain them. Name asti vedushya api napi bhaktir virakriti raktir na tathapi lolyat sudurgamadeva bhavami veda stutyartha chintamani rasi granu. Though I have no wisdom, devotion or detachment, I am still greedy to take the philosopher's stone of the Vedas prayers from the fortress in which it is being kept. Mam nichitayam avivekavayuhu parvartate patayitum balachet likhamyatah swami sanatana shri krishnangri bha stambha kritavalambha. If the wind of indiscretion, my failure to acknowledge my lowly position, threatens to knock me down, then while writing this commentary, I must hold on to the effulgent pillars of the feet of Sridhar Swami, Sanatan Swami and Lord Shri Krishna. Pranamya Shri Gurum Bhuyaha Shri Krishnam Karunarvam Lokanatham Jagat Chakshuhu Shri Sukham Tam Upashraya. Repeatedly bowing down to my divine spiritual master and to Lord Shri Krishna, the ocean of mercy, I take shelter of Shukdev Goswami, the protector of the world and its universal eye. At the end of the preceding chapter, Shukdev Goswami told Parikshit Maharaj, Evam sa bhaktayo rajan bhagwan bhakta bhaktiman ushit vadishva sanamarga punaradwara vatim agat. Thus, O King, the personality of Godhead, who is the devotee of his own devotees, stayed for some time with his two great devotees, teaching them how perfect saints behave. Then he returned to Dwarka. In this verse, the word Sanmargam can be understood in at least three ways. In the first, Sat is taken to mean devotee of the Supreme Lord, and thus Sanmargam means the path of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. In the second, with Sat meaning a seeker of transcendental knowledge, Sanmargam means the philosophical path of knowledge, which has impersonal Brahman as its object. And in the third, with Sat referring to the transcendental sound of the Vedas, Sanmargam means the process of following Vedic injunctions. Both the second and the third of these interpretations of Sanmargam lead to the question of how the Vedas can describe the absolute truth. Srila Sridhar Swami elaborately analyzes this problem in terms of the traditional discipline of Sanskrit poetics. We should consider that words have three kinds of expressive capacities called the Shabdavattis. These are the different ways a word refers to its meaning, distinguished as Mukhya Vritti, Lakshana Vritti and Guna Vritti. The Shabda Vritti termed Mukhya is the primary, literal meaning of a word. This is also known as Abhidha, a word's denotation or dictionary meaning. Mukhya vritti is further divided into two subcategories, namely Rudhi and Yog. A primary meaning is called Rudhi when it is based on conventional usage, and Yog when it is derived from another word's meaning by regular etymological rules. For example, the word go, cow, is an example of Rudhi, since its relation with its literal meaning is purely conventional. The denotation of the word pachak, chef, on the other hand, is a yoga vritti, through the word's derivation from the root pach, to cook, by addition of the agent suffix ka. Besides its mukhya vritti or primary meaning, a word can also be used in a secondary metaphorical sense. This usage is called lakshana. The rule is that a word should not be understood metaphorically if its mukhya vritti makes sense in the given context. Only after the mukhya vritti fails to convey a word's meaning may lakshana vritti be justifiably presumed. The function of lakshana is technically explained in the Kavya Shastras as an extended reference pointing to something in some way related to the object of the literal meaning. Thus the phrase Gangayam Ghosha literally means the cowherd village in the Ganges, but that idea is absurd. So here Gangayam should rather be understood by its lakshana to mean on the bank of the Ganges, the bank being something related to the river. Gunavritti is a special kind of lakshana where the meaning is extended to some idea of similarity. For example, in the statement Simho Devadattaha, Devadatta is a lion. Heroic Devadatta is metaphorically called a lion because of his lion-like qualities. In contrast, the example of the general kind of lakshana, namely Gangayam Ghosha, involves a relationship not of similarity but of location. In the first verse of the 87th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj expresses doubt as to how the words of the Vedas can refer to the absolute truth by any of the valid kinds of Shabda Vritti. He asks, Katham Sakshat Charanti? How can the Vedas directly describe Brahman by Rudha Mukhya Vritti, literally meaning based on convention? After all, the absolute is Anideshya, inaccessible to designation. And how can the Vedas ever describe Brahman by Gunavritti, metaphor based on similar qualities? The Vedas are Gunavrittaha, full of qualitative descriptions, but Brahman is Nirguna, without qualities. Obviously, a metaphor based on similar qualities cannot apply in the case of something that has no qualities. Furthermore, Parikshit Maharaj points out that Brahman is Sad Asataha Param, beyond all causes and effects. Having no connection with any manifest existence, subtle or gross, the Absolute cannot be expressed by either Yoga Vritti, a meaning derived etymologically, or Lakshana, metaphor, since both require some relationship of Brahman to other entities. Thus King Parikshit is puzzled as to how the words of the Vedas can directly describe the absolute truth. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatadam Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So this chapter describes the personified Vedas glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as King Parikshit asked these questions, that Vedas are referred and providing enlightenment related to the three modes of material nature, to this material. And even there, they are limited. So how can they describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And in response to Shukdev Goswami in response to this question, elaborates the previous incidents that had happened. So Shukdev Goswami starts by saying that Devashi Narad once, was visiting Badrika Ashram, and there Narayan Rishis were there. So he saw Narayan Rishi, addressing a crowd of saintly persons, and he immediately bowed down, paid obeisances to Sri Narayan Rishi and his associates, and he asked them. So this happened actually nearby village of Kalap, near Badrika Ashram. And he inquired the same question from Sri Narayan Rishi. And Sri Narayan Rishi referred to Devashi Narad, saying that the same question was actually being previously discussed by the Chaturkumaras and Janaloka. And at that time, they had chosen Sanandan Kumar to speak on the subject. And Sanandan told them how the numerous personified Vedas, Vedas also known as Shrutis, appearing as the first emanation from the breathing of Lord Vishnu, prayed to Lord Vishnu. So this is at the time of creation. And sometimes devotees, when we hear the topic of creation, we kind of lose our interest. Yet at the same time, when we hear about the prayers of the personified Vedas, they are very enlightening and purifying. So it's interesting. And this particular question is addressed by Sri Sanandana at Janaloka, and all the other three Kumaras along with him, means again, they are listening to Sri Sanandana. Now, one of the aspects is Narayan Rishi. They appeared from the very beginning of the day of Lord Brahma, and it is important to also refer back to the previous chapter, where in chapter 86, King Bahulashva was also glorifying Narayan Rishis. And on that particular incident, it becomes important to look back in history what had happened. So in the northern India, there used to be, before they appeared, and this is regarding the appearance of Sri Narayan Rishi, that we'll quickly visit to hear some of the glories of Sri Narayan Rishis. There used to be a demon by the name Dambodbhava. And the reason he's demon is, again, he is not realizing Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's worshipping demigods. So he worships, and he's a worshipper of the sun god. Sun god is Vivaswan. And by worshipping the sun god, he satisfies the sun god, and sun god appears to him and he says, ask for a boon. Now Dambodbhava wanted to become very powerful. And of course, like any other demon, he was afraid of death. So what's the boon he asked? Make me immortal, Amar, that I shall never die. And sun god, realizing the very nature of the Bodhbhava, knowing him well, sometimes when a demigod is being worshipped, demigod also is interested in knowing about that devotee of theirs. So he knew that he has a lot of demoniac qualities, so he immediately said, no, ask for any other boon. And at that time, Dambodbhava asked that he shall be protected by 1,000 kavach. Kavach is armor. And no one should be able to, none of the Kshatriyas and other demigods should be able to pierce, and only it can be pierced by an ascetic who has performed sacrifices for 1,000 years. So an ascetic would be able to destroy one kavach, just that. And as soon as one of that shield is broken, that person who has destroyed that shield would immediately die. And at that particular instance, means again, looking at this request of his devotee, sun god, he immediately observed him, and then being pleased by Dambodbhava, he granted him that wish. And of course, along with that, Dambodbhava had asked for other boons like, he should not be killed over time and he should not be killed. But this was a specific condition that has to be met. So he receives 1,000 armors protecting him. So they are like shields protecting him. And so his name changes to Sahastra Kavach. Kavach is, the chest armor that protects you. Now Sahastra Kavach he started causing havoc everywhere because he was so powerful, he wanted to show his prowess. Just like Hiranyakashipu, right? Means when he receives that boon from Brahma, he goes and wins all the 3 worlds and so forth. So similarly, Sahastra Kavach, he was causing great havoc. So at that time, hearing about, the havoc he was causing, Murti, who was, wife of Dharma, she became compassionate towards the living entities. And she said, how can I remedy this? And as a devotee does, they pray to the Lord. So she worshipped Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu was pleased by her. So he appeared and she expressed that, she wants to see this Sahastra Kavach being destroyed. So at that time, Lord Vishnu said that, yes, I will appear in your womb. And as a son, after appearing, I will destroy Sahastra Kavach. Now she is very pleased. So in time, she gives birth, but not to one son, but to 2 sons. And she names them Nar, Narayan. And these 2 sons are ascetics. They are also rishis. So they, study the Shastras, they perform sacrifices. And in Treta Yuga, the proper, way of getting perfection, of course, this is, and Srila Prabhupada in his conversation during a morning walk identified that Nar, Narayan rishis were the Shaktavish avatars of Lord Vishnu. So, and also, Murti, she took care that these 2 sons of her, the twin brothers, Narayana and Rishi, they also become expert in fighting. So, with various weapons and so forth. So, these 2 rishis, they were residing in Badrika Ashram. And Sahastra Arjun was causing havoc in the northern part of India. So, Mithila was also attacked and he had caused havoc over there as well. And he was approaching Badrika Ashram area. At that time, the residents of nearby villages and towns, they approached Sri Narayan Rishis and said, how can you, please save us, from this demon, Sahastra Kavach. And at that time, Narayan Rishis gave them the assurance, yes, we will protect you. So it so happened that as Sahastra Kavach approaches near Badrika Ashram area, Nar faces him. And he says, stop, you demon, and fight with me. And Nar looks at it. He realizes that this is an ascetic. He is in the form of a, brahmachari and so forth. So he realizes that this particular ascetic may very well be meeting, yet at the same time he is thinking that even if he is able to break one of his armor, the ascetic will die immediately. So, so he tries to identify, do you know who I am? And Nar says, don't talk about big words, let's fight. So the fighting begins. And Sahastra Kavach is, amazingly affected, because Nar Rishi is fighting with great prowess. And as he is fighting, Sahastra Kavach is realizing that this ascetic definitely has performed extensive sacrifices. And as soon as his first armor breaks, Sahastra Kavach's first armor breaks, he still has 999. And what happens? As per the boon, Nar Rishi immediately falls to the ground dead. Now Sahastra Kavach, feeling satisfied that Nar Rishi is dead, suddenly what does he see? He sees Nar Rishi, running towards him. And when he sees Nar Rishi running towards him, he is amazed. And then he sees Nar Rishi stopping and then chanting some mantras right beside his body. So he is really surprised what's happening. And as what is happening is, this is Narayan Rishi, who came running knowing that his brother has died. His twin brother has died. So he comes to Nar Rishi's body and he chants mantras, sprinkling the water from his Kumandulu, and Nar Rishi immediately becomes alive. And Nar Rishi leaves to perform sacrifices for the 1,000 years, while Narayan Rishi approaches Sahastra Kavach to fight with him. Now they are fighting, and Narayan Rishi immediately destroys another one of his armor. And as soon as the armor is destroyed, based on the boon, Narayan Rishi falls to the ground dead. In the meantime, Nar Rishi was performing sacrifices. He comes immediately to the spot, chants mantras, sprinkles water from his Kamandalu, and Narayana Rishi comes back to life and goes to perform sacrifices while Nar Rishi starts fighting with Sahastra Kavach. So 998 armors are there. So the sequence keeps going on. Every time one of the twin brothers would destroy the Kavach, they would fall dead on the ground. The other brother would come, bring the brother back to life, and this brother who's brought back to life would go back to perform sacrifices. And the brother who has just come after performing sacrifices would fight with the demon and destroy one of his Kavach. And as he falls down, the other brother would come and bring him back to life. So in this manner, 999 armors are destroyed, and now Sahastra Kavach knows that his end is near. Realizing this, Sahastra Kavach flees the battlefield, and he goes and takes shelter of the sun god, his worshipable deity. Now the sun god, when somebody asks, and especially his devotee is asking for his shelter, he gives them the shelter. And when Narayana Rishi approach him and they ask to return Sahastra Kavach to them, when Narayana Rishi says, "Give me back Sahastra Kavach, we want to destroy him," sun god refuses. He says, "He has taken my shelter. I'm sorry, Lord, your lordships cannot return him to you." So at that time, Nar Rishi becomes angry. He says, "You have refused the request of my brother. So I curse you to be born as a human and suffer on this planet Earth." So it so happened that that particular boon manifests when Queen Kunti, being given the boon by Durvasa Muni to be able to welcome any of the demigods she would meditate on while chanting the mantra and get a son from that demigod. So she was just looking at the sunset scene, and at that time she gets mesmerized and she wants to try out that particular boon she had received from Durvasa Muni. And she tests it out, and sun god appears, Vivaswan. So Vivaswan is also known as Surya Narayan. So we have seen that picture where his forearm form, he's also holding conch, gada, and gada is the club, Padma is the lotus flower, and chakra is the the wheel. And then he says, "Oh, I was just trying this particular mantra, so please go with." And sun god says, "No, at this particular time, since the boon says that you will have a son, so you will have a son and your chastity will still be intact." So that's how she gives birth to Karna because of that boon. And she leaves Karna, a small baby, in the river where in a bucket, and Karna has that. Karna is none other than Dambodbhava appearing with simultaneously with sun god, because he also had the curse from Nar Rishi. So Karna is born with the Kamandalu and the last Kavach to protect him. And this, as he grows up and finally comes to the scene of battlefield at Kurukshetra, of Kurukshetra. And at Kurukshetra, when Lord Krishna and Lord Arjuna are present, they are none other than Narayana Rishis. So again, Narayana Rishi is an expansion of Lord Krishna, and Arjuna is also known as Nara. And when they are fighting with Karna, at that time, they realize that this last Kavach is there, Lord Krishna knows, and if Arjuna destroys this Kavach, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai, Shri Shri Gauratai ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. So Arjuna knows, Lord Krishna knows that if Arjuna destroys this last Kavach, he would die immediately. So King Indra, he goes in the form of a Brahman, and Karna, he used to perform great charity. He is also known as Danveer Karna. So the demon Dambodbhava in the form of Karna in his next birth, when he is performing charity as in the form of a Brahman, King Indra approaches Karna and asks for his Kamandalu and the earrings as well as the kavach, the last kavach of Dambodbhava. And Karna gladly gives him. So he's glorified because of that incident. And that's because of the sun god being present in him. That's the, like the great quality of sun god being present in him. So afterwards, when he appears, Karna, without that, and of course in response he asks Indra for the weapon which actually was used to destroy Bhima's son, Ghatotkacha. So when Karna and Arjuna are facing each other at that time, a great battle ensues, and we all know that how Karna's wheel, was not supported by the Mother Earth and went further down, digging in the ground, and Karna came down to lift this wheel, while at the same time, because of the curse of Parshuram, his guru, his spiritual master, he had forgotten the mantras to use the weapons properly. And at that time, Krishna directs Arjuna, and Arjuna kills Karna. And then Queen Kunti comes and identifies that he was the eldest brother of the Pandavas. So the glories of Narayana Rishi is that how they were able to destroy Sahastra Kavach. And coming to this particular incident where Narad Muni, he approaches Badrika Ashram, and where he inquires the very same question, that how could the Vedas personified glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there are various great aspects which are being discussed. So at that time, Narayan Rishi addresses that. The same question was asked by the residents of Janaloka, and Shri Sanandana had addressed those. And after the annihilation of the universes, when Lord Vishnu, who's Garbhodakshai Vishnu, the Mahavishnu, who's lying in the ocean, and again more universes are about to come out from the pores of his body at that time, as the creation is about to happen at that time, from his breathing first came out the personified Vedas. And these Vedas, they started singing prayers to the Lordship. And these prayers are likened the great reciters when they come, and the king in the morning is going to be awake. At that time they wake him up by reciting wonderful prayers, by reciting very beautiful melodious instruments and songs and so forth. So similarly, Vedas are glorifying the Lordship as how he is so merciful to the living entities that he provides them an environment where they can gratify their desires of sense gratification. And it provides them an environment, and this environment is driven, the seed is the Mahat Tattva and the false ego. So those are the two essential elements of the seed of creation of this material world, which provides. Now it's very important to realize why false ego. Because false ego on its own provides a perfect universe for each living entity. Statistically it's not possible to create a universe for each living entity. However, each living entity has been given false ego, a forgetfulness of our relationship with Krishna, and then the desire to have, sense gratification. And this causes a living entity to create their own universe within their mind. And mind becomes this storehouse, and the intelligence is driven to provide, ideas and ways to explore to satisfy this material world. So at that time, Narayan Rishi also identifies that Devashi Narad was also present at that time, but not at this location at Janaloka. He was actually visiting the Lord on Shwetadeep, so he missed this particular inquiry at the Janaloka. So, as the Shrutis, the personified Vedas, also known as Shrutis, they were glorifying the Lord and identifying how this material world is created as His mercy. And how those who have realized their position are able to overcome this illusion, and are properly situated in the position and start to worship the Lord with faith, And at the lotus feet of the Lord, that's where they reside. They always seek shelter in the lotus feet of the Lord. A beautiful metaphor is given here, is that of swans, as how the swans are also known as hamsas. They play with the lotus, the kamal, the lotus flowers. So similarly, the sages as swans are playing and taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, you can think of that playing as dancing, right? The devotees love to dance and sing glories of the Lordship. So the Vedas continue their description and identifies that the human body is such a boon that can be used in the devotional service. So now it's actually, this is where the question is being answered directly as well as indirectly. So if you look at a body of water and you throw in the body of water a lump of iron, what happens to it? It just sinks down to the bottom, right? Because it's heavy. Now, if you were to use the same metal and make a boat shape, so the big ships that we see, the cruises, they have this metal hull on which the whole ship is resting. And now if you put it on top of water, as a boat it floats because it has displaced enough water to equalize its weight and still has, more surface to show. So when perfectly balanced, a boat made of the same metal can float on the water instead of sinking in. So similarly is the capacity of a human body, where with proper, use of our facilities, when engaged in devotional service, we can go back home and cross over this material world. However, that apart from the endeavor that we need to make, there is an essential aspect the Vedas are glorifying, and that is the causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And people who are not realizing this particular, purpose, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, what is the purpose of our life, to have inquiry on Brahman. When we don't realize that, the human being, they are committing spiritual suicide. And they are worshipping what? They are worshipping Maya. Maya is also known as that what is not, or illusion. Because why is it called illusion? It's called illusion because it is forgetfulness of our true position. It's forgetfulness of our Krishna consciousness. So simply by attaining, so somewhere or other, it is recommended that one should come in contact with Krishna. There is a story of a thief who hears about a boy in Vrindavan who is tending to the cows, and he is bedecked with great jewels, pearls and so forth. So this thief goes to Vrindavan in search of this boy, and he finds Gopal. Gopal is Lord Krishna, and that just refers, he is glorified, Surbhi Abhipalayantam. So he loves to tend to the cows. And this thief, just by association of Lord Krishna, means he is actually trying to ask, he goes to Lord Krishna in his Gopal boy form, and he says, stays with him all day, and at the end of the day he says, can I have some of the jewels? And Lord Krishna says, no, my mother will get angry. So every day the thief would go and have company of Lord Krishna. And so, it so happened that over a period of time, his heart got purified. And one day Lord Krishna said, okay, now you can take whatever you feel like. But by this time, this thief had become pure at heart. And he said, I just need your company. So one way or another means one should come in association of Lord Krishna, in contact of Lord Krishna, and thus one will be purified. So now the Vedas are glorifying that even the enemies of the Lord, they attain the same absolute truth. They attain the spiritual world, and they can go back home, back to Godhead. So, and also, they also identify that everyone in this world who is born is sure to die. And this is where Srila Prabhupada, when addressing the university students, addressed that what is the common aspect between India and US? And people, the students were not able to answer, and he expressed that the death rate is 100%. Anyone who is born is sure to die. So similarly, there is a reason why we have attained this human life, and we should engage it in the service of Lord Shri Krishna and the devotees, Vaishnava Seva. And the dualistic conception is born of the three modes of material nature that brings about the ignorance. Yet at the same time, when we engage everything in service of Lord Krishna, we get delivered. Hare Krishna. There is also a description in the prayers given that though you have no material senses, you are self-sufficient, sustainer of everyone's sensory powers. So this refers to that Lord's senses are not, influenced by the three modes of material nature. He has transcendental senses. Because how can something come from nothing? If a son is born, he derives characteristics from his father. And so the prayers continue to go on, and also there is a nice reference given where the living entities, when they come in contact with Maya, just as bubbles are formed when water and air meets, when different type of oils meet, the different flowers, they merge into honey. So similarly, the conditioned beings, they eventually emerge, they merge back into you, the Supreme, along with their various names and qualities. And then there is a reference of a triple trimmed wheel of time. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, time I am. So now triple rimmed wheel of time, what do you think they are? What are the three rims? Past, present and future. Those are the three rims. Because in the spiritual world, there is only one rim. Everyone is in present moment. While we think in the terms of past, present and future. Vedas continue to pray, and they say that the mind is like an impetuous horse. So it's, also Arjuna identifies in Bhagavad Gita, it's obstinate, flickering and cannot be controlled. Even though wind can be controlled, the mind cannot be controlled. Then they glorify the sages who are free of false pride. And what does that mean? Once one is free of false pride, they are situated in the constitutional position. Jivera Sarup Hoye Krishnena Nityadas. So the living entities are eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. And when they are in forgetfulness, they are called conditioned. They also identify the characteristic of this material world, that it is not permanent, it is impermanent, and thus it is an illusion. Yet at the same time, since it emanates from the Lordship, when the great sages see this particular universe as an expansion of Lord Krishna, they become jubilant. And these members of renounced order who can uproot the false traces of material desire in their hearts. But if you are not able to do that, then they stay impure and cannot approach the Supreme Lord. There is a nice story about that. Once there was a fisherman, he, due to thunderstorm, he takes shelter of a householder. And at that time, the householder says, yes, you can come in, but you have to leave your smelly fish net outside. Now all night the fisherman could not sleep and he was pacing in the room. So the man asked, why not sleeping? The fisherman says that, he is so used to his fish net, he cannot sleep. At that time the householder says, well, if you want to be with your net, then you have to sleep on the porch outside the house. And so the fisherman goes out. So similarly, when someone wants to enjoy independent of Lord Krishna, they are sent to this material world. So that's just an analogy that's been given by Srila Prabhupada as well. And so Narayana Rishi, they identify how this has happened, and they give blessing to Narad Muni. At that time, Devashi Narad, he glorifies Lord Krishna. And Srila Sridhar Swami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad, they have identified that this is just appropriate because Sri Narayana Rishi, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, all the other Purusharthas, Karanadakshai Vishnu, Shirodakshai Vishnu, they are all like expansions of Lord Shri Krishna. Janmadhyasya yatho anvayad itraschatashva abhigya swayad. So again, And also the Mool Mantra, the main essence in Srimad Bhagavatam is in 1.3.28. Ete chams kalha pumsa krishnastu bhagwan swayam indrari vyakuram loke mridayanti yuge yuge. So Lord Krishna is the cause of all causes, and is also the causes of the various Vishnu Tattvas, the various plenary expansions of plenary expansion, and so forth. And then Devashi Narad, after glorifying, he pays obeisances to Shri Narayan Rishi, and he goes to the house of Vedvyas, where he imparts this knowledge to Vedvyas, and Shukdev Goswami has thus received it from his father, sage Vedvyas. So at this point, this chapter ends and glorifies how the prayers, so the chapter is how the personified Vedas prayed to the Supreme Lord and how they glorified. So again, similarly the devotees, they always like to recite prayers. So when we are new in the temple, we kind of like come and we have our individual prayers. But when we, learn about the Krishna consciousness, how the movement has begun and so forth, we hear from Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we realize that prayers are very essential, and they are essential to purify us. Akuru attain perfection just by prayers. So similarly, this is one of the 9 processes of devotional service one can attain. And it's very easy to say prayers, and if you don't know prayers, you can always say the simplest prayer that we know, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let's end at this particular point. If you have any questions or comments. Kanthaya Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Kori Vaishnava ki jai, Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.